Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today's session. We're doing a workshop today on GRE, on the verbal section of the GRE. Today's instructor with us is Tanzeel Azam. I'll hand it over to him in just a few minutes. My name is Zain Ali, and I'm an Education USA advisor at our Islamabad office in Pakistan. A little bit about us. What is Education USA? Education USA is a global network under the US Department of State, made up of over 425 international student advising centers in more than 175 countries. We are your official source to US higher education through Education USA advisors that are working with advisees to provide updated, comprehensive, and unbiased information on higher education in the United States. In Pakistan, we are a part of the United States Educational Foundation, USEFP, which is also the Fulbright Commission of the country. USEFP promotes mutual understanding between the people of Pakistan and the people of the United States through educational and cultural exchange. We have offices in Islamabad, Lahore, and Karachi, but are also available for any student that needs our support or advising throughout Pakistan virtually, for example, email, call, and through our app. Other than advising, USEFP also has a programs department that administers multiple fully funded programs, including the Fulbright Scholarship. You can find information on our fully funded programs on our website. More so, other than that, USEFP also has the authorized prometric testing centers in Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad. And if, for example, if you have to give GRE or TOEFL, you can sign up for that at USEFP's prometric testing center. If you have any questions about testing at all, please email testing@usefp.org. That's it for my part. I'm now going to stop sharing my screen and hand it over to Tanzeel, and he can start off his session.
Super. If you could confirm, then if you could hear me out loud.
Yes, I can hear you.
Cool. I'm going to share my screen as well so that you can confirm once it's visible. Is it visible?
No, it's not visible.
Just a second. It should be now.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, super. All right, everyone. Thank you, Zen, for a quick round of introduction. So over the course of next 90 to 120 minutes, I'll take you guys through what GRE is all about, and most importantly, the verbal component of it. Before we begin, I think it's imperative and extremely important to understand the purpose why anyone would want to sit or take GRE. It's basically a test for graduate studies, predominantly in US, which is conducted throughout the year. And just like Zan was mentioning, we have centers in Pakistan and across all cities where the test is conducted, and it has two major components, one being verbal and one being quantitative. So that's first to begin with. The first thing that I want to discuss with you guys is, especially for those who have had some familiarity with the GRE testing structure, and it changes post the September this year in 2023. So the current structure is relatively simple and shorter compared to the previous one. There are 5 sections in total. The first one starts off with analytical writing, which is first section comprising of 30 minutes. We'll talk about that in detail. And then followed by 4 sections, 2 from verbal and 2 from quantitative. And as you can see, even in the slide, the order in which they appear will change, can change, and there's no one way to guarantee that after the analytical writing, if you will get verbal followed by quantitative or quantitative followed by verbal. All of them have a certain set in terms of number of questions and a total number of minutes that are given to you. Obviously, in this, we will be talking about the analytical writing and the verbal reasoning section, but it's important for you to get an overall idea of the total duration of the test, the number of sections that there are there, and then obviously how they're constructed. First thing first, I think the most important thing for anyone planning to sit for GRE is to identify the kind of score they want to get to. If this was interactive session, I usually ask students of what their aspiration is, or first, how many of them fully understand how GRE is scored. So for each of the section, the total score is from 260 to 340. And each of the two components, verbal has a range from 130 to 170, and obviously same goes for quant, it has a range from 130 to 170. And the funny bit is, the interesting bit is, even if you do nothing on the exam, you still can get a minimum score of 130, which basically means that you attempted not even a single question. And if you score perfect, you can get as high as 170. So the question that I ask students is, or the question or the homework that anyone has to do in the beginning, in the first few stages when they're planning to sit for their GRE is, what's the end goal? What's the target score that they're aiming to get? Because a good score is a subjective proposition. For someone, 300 could be a good score, and for someone, 330 might not be that good of a score. So it's extremely important for you to have your own understanding of what's your target score. Now, the natural question that arises from this is that, okay, what is a good score, or how should I go about it? And the approach to sort of address that depends on your list or preference of schools where you want to go for your graduate studies. For example, a hypothetical statement that there's a student, Haris, who has to filter out 5 top schools where he wants to go, not in terms of ranking, but obviously basis his own preferences, basis all other attributes that he or she is considering while selecting a graduate school. It could be in terms of expertise in that particular area or subject, the employment opportunities within that state, or ABC other factors. Once you have made up that list of 5 schools where you intend to go, then you identify the average GRE scores of the last 2 to 3 years of classes which have joined those graduate programs. And this is usually the public information that is easily available on most of the websites of these universities. And in some cases, even if it's not available, you can always reach out to the administrative staff. You can email to them. They're usually very responsive, and you will get a response on the average GRE score that they have had on the classes who have been inducted in the similar course or subject over the last 2 to 3 years. That gives you a starting point of what you should be aiming at. Now, going back to our hypothetical example of Haris, let's suppose Haris has selected 5 schools, and those 5 schools have had an average GRE score of the students coming to that program somewhere around from 315 to 322. Yeah. So let's assume he's opting, one of the universities that he's opted is a state school or a relatively a middle tier school, which may have a lower score of GRE on, let's suppose, 315, and one of them is the relatively a higher profile school requiring a higher GRE, and it's on the 322 side of the spectrum. So at least that gives a benchmark of the minimum score that Haris needs to get in order to make his profile competitive for the GRE. Now, obviously, the question will arise, and extended team of USEFP is there to sort of provide you all sort of advice, counseling, and guidance with regards to your application as well. However, GRE is not the only component they look at while evaluating your admissions to the graduate program. Obviously, it's a package deal, but it's one of the key factors, a key factor that can sort of make your profile more competitive, not only for the admissions, but also for the scholarship decision that at times is also linked to the score of GRE for the students. Anyways, let's assume that 315 to 322 is the range that Haris has sort of found out from his research. And now his obvious aim or objective would be to sort of target 325, obviously, because it's going to be on the higher end of the spectrum. So that's going to be the starting point for Haris, because that has to be the target, at least, which would make his profile competitive for the schools that he want to get to. Now, from here, we work in a reverse order, okay? That 325 is the target that I want to get to. What's the construct of the score that I need to sort of, get? Here it depends on two, three things. First, it depends on the kind of program that you're going into. So let's suppose if you're going into a program that is that is more in towards social sciences, then obviously you will need a higher score on the verbal component. And if your program is more towards, let's suppose, business or organizational sciences, then a higher score on the quant might be required. Fortunately, most of the schools publish their GRE or GMAT equivalent scores with separate component of verbal and quantitative score as well. So even if Haris' target is 325, there's a very strong likelihood and probability that he'll also have a target that, let's suppose, in verbal, he needs to score at least a 160, and in quantitative, he needs to score, let's suppose, a 165. That can make his accumulative score to be 325. So that's the construct or the combination that he or she will have to sort of build towards in order to make the profile competitive. That's the first sort of research and the homework that anyone who is planning to take GRE has to go through before even getting to the prep bit. Once you know that your target for individual sections, the second step comes out to be that you need to sort of do a self-evaluation, okay? That let's suppose 325 is my total target and 120, 125 is the score that I need to aim in verbal and quantitative respectively. Where am I standing today? That becomes our third extremely important question. And for you to sort of get to that or get a read on that or a pulse on that, it would be imperative that you take a complete mock test on either ETS website or in one of the prep materials or the textbooks that you're using. Basically, you need to get your assessment of where you're sitting today to get an idea of
Tanzeel?
where. Yeah.
Tanzeel, are you still on slide number 2?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Because some people were just thinking that the slides weren't moving, but just to
No,
let
no.
them.
So yeah, let me just open my chat bit over here so that I can see. Yeah, we are still on the first slide, Aliza and Iftikhar. I'll let you know once I move the slides because it's important for everyone to have a preamble and understanding of how to go about the exam. So yeah, once we know that this is a certain target, then we need to do our self-assessment. And the self-assessment begins with taking a mock on the ETS website or doing it one of the textbooks. What that would do for you is that sitting today, this is a score that you're getting. Again, going back to Haris' example, let's suppose Haris ends up scoring 290 in his GRE mock test with a construct of 145 in each of the both sections. Yeah. So now what Haris has is that he needs to bridge a gap of 35 points. And out of those 35 points, ideally, 20 points will have to come through the quantitative section, and 15 points will have to come through the verbal section. And that's where this slide becomes extremely important for us to understand that how these two sections are structured and how each question can help you improve your score on the exam. Yeah. So that's the reason I spent 15 minutes on this preamble bit before getting into the verbal component of GRE is because it's imperative in my 7 to 8 years of working with students teaching GRE or SAT or GMAT. it is one fundamental step that people miss out, and that's the approach that they need to take before they take the standardized test, and the end goal or the target they need to meet. Yes, it sounds great that you can or should score a perfect score or as high as possible, but it's best to have a targeted approach in mind and then work in a reverse order in order to get to the score that you want to get to. All right. Um, I will, during the course of next 90 minutes, I will keep on taking short breaks in between so that I can sort of take questions on the relevant subject as well. So over here, I'm gonna pause for, say, 20 seconds to see if there are any questions in the Q&A box before moving forward. So over to you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box and we'll then move forward. All right, so we'll talk about the gap score. Time issues related to timing. Yes, absolutely. Sonia, we are talking about the latest structure only. So yeah, predominantly there will be captured in your in this discussion. Recommended books, and when we'll give you. All right, cool. Thank you for the questions. We'll move forward, and I'll address some of the questions in the meantime, and some of them will get captured and answered in the next few, in the next hour or so. All right. Moving forward. First of all, I think some of you had asked recommended books. Well, there are various different kinds of textbooks available. You can get ETS official textbook. That's a great source of information. You can get Smart Prep. You can get Barron's. You can get Princeton edition. All of these are recommended. My own personal preference and inclination is towards the official guide of ETS that gives a very holistic perspective on both subjects and has enough number of sample questions to sort of address all the queries that you may or may have in the future. In terms of timing of the test depends on what you're aiming to do. If you're aiming to apply for Fulbright, then there's a certain timeline that you have to follow, keeping in view Fulbright application deadlines. If you're planning to apply for graduate studies on your own, then it's ideally best to have your scores available by August, because earlier admissions start in September for the fall intake of the following year. So it's best to have your scores by August so that you can apply early, so that you can get full consideration for any early application and potential scholarships that are available for the earlier round to the students in the graduate program. So yeah, that's that. I hope that addresses the question. Okay. Moving forward, once we know, and yeah, there was a question about the gap score. Gap score is basically the score that you've targeted and the score that you're standing at currently post the mock test. That's basically the gap score on which you basically build your study plan. Getting more into deeper details of the GRE test structure and how it is structured at the moment. Right now, it's basically for verbal component. If I take analytical writing on one side, the verbal reasoning has basically two sections. One section has 12 questions, which has 18 minutes, and the other one has 15 questions, which has 23 minutes. So altogether, 27 questions in verbal and a total of 41 minutes. Yeah. Now, the first question that usually arises is, how are these scored from 130 to 170 for any individual section. The response to that is each of the question that you attempt or answer correctly, it's basically if that's the raw score. That raw score is converted into a scaled score using a process called equating that basically uses the difficulty level of that question and a certain percentile to the question to basically help you land at a particular score that falls within the range of 130 and 170. So that's how these 27 questions are structured. Previously, we used to have within the verbal component 20 questions in each of the sections, so there were 40 questions. Now altogether they've sort of shortened or trimmed the test, and there are 27 questions. How they are structured, it's very important to understand in terms of our verbal reasoning. So first thing first, there are three major types of questions or the kind of questions that you'll come across. One is called reading comprehension. The second one is called sentence equivalence, and the third one is called text completion. And all of these require certain skills and strengths, and we will talk about them in detail over the course of the next few hours. However, it is imperative to understand that all in all, this verbal component tests your ability to understand and analyze English as a language. If you're able to sort of put different pieces of information together, make some critical analysis from them, and be able to identify how different components of sentences are dependent on each other in a particular paragraph or a subject of any text for that matter. We'll talk about all of these three components in detail. So we'll start off with text completion first, and I would want to get a view from you guys. What's your view? What do you think? What are the text completion questions? Any thoughts, any views on that? So I'm going to pause for 30 seconds and I'll take your views. What do you think? What are the text completion questions? All right. I think most of the views are on the completing the text based on the information that is given. Yes, the session is being recorded. I think it's how you can get in touch with Jen and
Yes, for everybody asking about recording, we'll get to that towards the end of the session. These sessions are always recorded. You can go on the USEFP Facebook page or the YouTube channel, and these sessions will be available there. For now, please keep any questions that aren't related to the GRE verbal section, reserve them for the end, and I will answer them, and let's let Tanzeel do his session. Okay, everybody?
just mention, text completion is, as the name suggested, is basically giving you a piece of information with a certain filling the blank, and you have to basically using the information that is provided to you in the sentence, you have to fill in the blank with the right word. Now the trick is usually the passage that is given to you is 1 to 5 sentences long, and they're usually 1 or 2 or even up to 3 blanks in a certain question. Now the interesting bit is, as I've sort of highlighted some of the key pointers over here, If you have a single blank, the life is relatively easy because you have five answer choices and you have to select one, and one out of five is going to be correct. There's a probability of 20%. If we go without implying the process of elimination, we can move forward. However, whenever there are more than one blank in a sentence, if there are two or three, and as we'll see in some of the examples going forward, you have to get all of these blanks correct in order to get full credit for that question only. Or in other words, there is no credit for partially correct answers. There is a possibility that you may get a text completion question with three blanks. You may end up getting two right and one wrong, but you will not get any credit or any partial credit for getting two answer choices right if all of the three are not correct. So that's something which is extremely important for you to sort of understand and evaluate while we do text completion question. Usually, in a total of 27 questions that you get in verbal, you can expect 5 to 7 questions to be from text completion questions. There is no defined or hard and fast or black and white rule in terms of how many of them would be a single blank, how many of them would be a double blank, and how many of them would be a three blank question. There's no defined rule or guideline on that. However, it's important for you to understand that the principle applies, that there's no credit for partially correct answers, and you have to get all the answer choices correct in order to get a full credit for that. Yeah. Um, I'm going, I'll take you guys to some of the examples and we'll sort of try to see how to address these kind of questions with the help of an example. So this is a sample question from text completion. And I want you guys to take a minute to sort of first go through the text only and do not look at the answer choices. I'll give you guys 60 seconds for it and then we'll take it from there. Okay, assuming all of you have read through it. The first thing that you have to do is whenever you're looking at a text completion question, it's extremely important for you to sort of paraphrase the sentence, try to understand the tone of the sentence, and fill the missing blank with the word of your own choice without looking at the answer choices. Uh, this is the gist of what capability we try to build with the students during the 5-6 week course of the GRE is that how first we scan, read the sentence, paraphrase it, identify the tone of the sentence, and then fill the missing word, a missing blank with the word that we think makes perfect sense without looking at the answer choices. That is one extremely important point for you to not look at the answer choices directly right away when you're looking at uh, the text completion question, because you would want to and you have to sort of train your mind, train your brain gradually to reach to a level where you start picking up or start coming up with your own word, irrespective of the language. As long as you're able to get the feel of the missing word or what it should be in there, you will be able to sort of identify or match your choice with the answer choice given in the options. So, for example, in parts of the Arctic, the land grades into the land-fast ice so blank that you can walk off the coast and not know you're over the hidden sea. If you critically read this sentence and try to sort of understand it, what it's saying is that there are certain parts in Arctic where the land is grading in such a way we don't know because there's a blank, so blank, but it's describing in later part of the sentence that you can walk off the coast and not know you're over the hidden sea. So it's kind of describing the word that is missing over here because the and then you try to come up with the word of your own choice. And I would want to sort of hear from you guys, and I'm gonna pause for 30 seconds again and see if uh you could share what you think could be the potential word that comes to your mind when you read the sentence. So feel free to share your thoughts in the chat box. What do you think is the missing word? So I'm gonna take 30 seconds, pause for you guys to share your view. Okay. So most of you have said B, some of you have said D, not knowing the meaning of D, that's fine. Um, Permanently. Okay, cool. All right. Thank you guys for your response. So what we need to do is, if we are not fully sure of the answer choice that we want to go with, we apply what we call process of elimination. Yeah. Process of elimination helps us to sort of eliminate the answer choices we know are definitely not right, and then sort of make an educated guess even if you're not fully sure of the right answer choice. So if you look at this, do you guys think if there's any one or two obviously wrong answer choice that you would want to eliminate? Which are those options? And you can share again in the chat box of the answer choices that you would want to eliminate for sure. So Hina says should eliminate A and E. Anyone else? Okay, cool. Thank you. Um, I think one word, one option that is coming consistently is permanently. So yes, absolutely, like you guys mentioned, permanently is an answer choice that is not fitting in well here. Same goes for C, irregularly, because what's being described after the blank does not explain irregularly. So you can safely eliminate A and C, and what you're left with would be B, D, and E. And then you can make an educated guess if you do not fully understand which one to go with. However, this is where uh, parallel part or importance of vocabulary building comes into play. A lot of times in GRE, it would be imperative for you to sort of in parallel develop your capability or your strength when it comes to vocabulary. And it starts with the most frequently used word list. That's usually a list of 3,000 words. That would be great for you to sort of build an appreciation and acquaintance with those words and how they're used in different contexts and their primary, literal, and secondary meaning, so that you, if in case get stuck with such words, you're able to sort of assess them accordingly. So within these options, the answer to that's correct is imperceptibly. Because precariously means cautiously, slightly again does not fit in here and can be eliminated. Imperceptibly is the word that basically describes what's happening in the later part of the sentence, which is that you can walk off the coast and not know you're over the hidden sea. It's something imperceptibly means something that cannot be fully perceived by senses. And that is exactly what's happening in the later part of the sentence, that you're walking off the coast, but you do not fully understand, or you don't fully know that you're over the hidden sea. So that's basically the approach that we use and build over the course of time for the text completion questions, for students to sort of fully understand how to address them. You read, you fully paraphrase and understand what the sentence is saying. You sort of try to identify the tone, and then you try to fill the word with the missing word with the word of your own choice. And once you have done that, you marry it with the answer choices that are given to you to arrive at the best possible choice. And in the process, you can apply process of elimination if you get stuck with some of the answer choices that you don't fully know or understand. Yeah. All right. Moving forward, another example. This one is a two blank question. I will give you guys 2 minutes to sort of review this blank and give your answer choices in the chat box. All right, mixed views. I'm glad we're getting all kind of options over here. All right, C and D. A and F, A and F, B and F. All right, great, great. Thank you for your inputs. What I would ideally want to do is, not sure if I could, I have the option in this. Let me just a second. Anyways, okay. Um, it would have been great if you were able to sort of take a view from one of the students if they could explain how they've sort of broken it down, but I'll do it on this one. Um, Using the same approach, although situated in the same neighborhood, little house, the little brick house seems blank compared to the ornate, almost blank new house beside it. So again, using the same approach, not looking at the answer choices immediately, but identifying the words on your own that you think would make best possible sense if they were placed in these answer choices. Yeah. Um, there's no absolute black and white rule in terms of whether you should go with the first blank first or the second blank first. It totally depends where you feel more confident and which one you think would help you get the question correct collectively. What you see over here is what we do know is that the first part, there's a trigger word, although in the same neighborhood, the little house seems something being compared to the ornate. So the word seems depicts contradiction, being compared to something which is new and decorated because it says ornate, almost blank. So what we know for sure is that the word that we're looking for in the second blank is in similar line with ornate. Yeah. So basis that we can eliminate diminutive, which means worn and destroyed in the second blank from the second column. Rest assured that you cannot pick the answer choice from for second blank from the first blank option. So it cannot be from A, B, C. It would be from D, E, F, right? So we know it's either translucent or ostentatious. And if again translucent comes with the notion of transparency, while the ostentatiousness basically means something which is um pompous, decorative, flashy, right? The word that is inconsistency or more coherence with the word ornate. So we know we can comfortably go with ostentatiousness, ostentatious in the second blank. And then if we know that ostentatious comes in the second blank, the first blank becomes a negative word, yeah? Because something is seems to get compared to the ornate ostentatious, it has to be a word with a negative connotation. Once you look at the first blank, you see that impressive and desirable are two positive answer choices, and the only one that you're left with is dilapidated. Now, the interesting bit over here is that even if you do not fully know the meaning or you don't understand the meaning of the word dilapidated, you can be comfortable and confident enough to proceed with it because you know for sure that impressive and desirable do not make sense over here. They do not address the question correctly, and that's why dilapidated can be selected even if we don't know the meaning of the word. And this is where the process of elimination becomes handy, even if we don't fully understand the vocabulary of the words that are given in the answer choices. So the correct answer choice to this question are dilapidated and ostentatious. Any questions on text completion? Because I would want to spend some time on text completion and reading comprehension as well. So I'm gonna pause over here for 2-3 minutes and see if there are any questions related to text completion. So over to you guys. Please share your question in the chat box. All right. You can again practice or prepare this part goes back to the same question that we were discussing earlier, that ETS official guide is the best starting point. Once you have fully completed that you can approach other textbooks like Barron's and Princeton to sort of complement your preparation. Picking the odd one out is not necessarily a good option because the test makers do know that students at times go with the odd one out or the deceptively looking correct answer choices, and that's not usually the right approach. You have to sort of do the right homework and approach before arriving at the right answer choices. Muslim use in a total set of 27 questions, you can expect somewhere from 5 to 7 questions on text completion. I hope that answers your question. If there are any other questions, you can sort of put them in the chat box. There are different ways to improve your vocabulary in a short amount of time. I wouldn't suggest cramming the words. I would suggest getting yourself acquainted with them in a way that you understand the meaning and their application. It is just not possible for you to sort of, cram those words and remember the application, considering usually students do not have a lot of time to prepare um, for GREs, usually from 2 to 6 months time. Uh, so again, building your vocabulary through use of high frequency word list, um, building a habit of reading editorial and scholastic work or something which is properly academically written, and then identifying the difficult words in those academic material, and then understanding the meaning of those words. These are some of the tactics that you can sort of use to gradually build your vocabulary. But I do not recommend cramming words overnight and trying to learn those words, because learning without application would not yield any benefit for that matter. Yeah, I hope that addresses the question. Um, Moving forward, so this was on the text completion. What we will spend next 15 to 20 minutes is on what we called sentence equivalence, and we'll come to that bit. But before we move forward, text completion and sentence equivalence are a bit similar to each other in some certain ways, and then they are different in some other ways. What I would want to hear from you guys is, and especially those who have had an experience of going through GRE or have seen GRE questions, what do you think are sentence equivalence questions all about? Yeah. Any thought about sentence equivalence questions? So fill in the synonyms. Okay. Two words, same meaning. Sentence logic wise. Sentence with nearly the same meaning, or if you're going in the right direction. Anything else? Synonyms. Okay. Okay. Cool. Thank you so much for your responses. So sentence equivalents are some questions that basically test your ability of how you can use different words in a situation that the meaning remains consistent or the same if the words are interchangeably used with one another. You're given a sentence with 6 answer choices, one blank. You have to select 2 answer choices that can or that should be used interchangeably, but keeping the meaning of the entire sentence consistent. Yeah. So again, I'm going to repeat it again because this is a very extremely important component that students at times miss out. That you are given six answer choices. You have to select two, and just like text completion, there is no partial credit for getting one answer choice correct. You have to select both correct options in order to get full credit for that particular question. And then you have to keep in mind that you keep the meaning consistent without changing the meaning in both of the two answer choices. Yeah. You have to make sure that once you've selected the pair of your answer choices, each of the two options keeps the meaning of the sentence from a grammar perspective, from a logic perspective, consistent, or in other words, so both words, when placed in that blank, should not change any meaning of that sentence, given the six answer choices that you have. So it has to make the best possible sentence from it. So let's try to understand this from an example. Just like test completion, you should read the sentence and not look at the answer choices until you have fully understood, paraphrased, and identify the tone of the sentence. Once you have done these three steps, you have to come up with the word of your own choice in your mind, either in language, irrespective of the language, be it Urdu or English, or the language of your own choice. Once you have identified that word, then you have to match that word with two of the answer choices in the six options you are available, and then move forward. Please make sure a lot of times students select one answer choice and sentence equivalence and confuse this with a text completion question. You won't get any credit for selecting one answer choice, so it would be a complete waste. So it's imperative that whenever you get sentence equivalence questions with six answer choices, you select two with the logic that we have identified and discussed shortly a while ago. Yeah. So if you look at this question, she volunteered to work in the soup kitchen because of her blank nature. The question is relatively straightforward and self-explanatory. The key words over here is volunteered and soup kitchen. So someone is volunteering to work in the soup kitchen because of her blank nature. So the nature has to be of something in the positive word direction, right? Because they're working in a soup kitchen and they're volunteering. So it cannot be baneful and selfish. So using the process of elimination, we can eliminate A and D, and then we're left with four answer choices. And one interesting thing that people do is the test makers, they put in deceptively wrong answer choices, which may come across as synonyms to you, but those synonyms may not have anything to do with the question that is being asked. Yeah. So we'll talk about that in a few other examples as we move forward. Again, moving forward, you can eliminate naive because someone is may not be naive and then having a word volunteered and soup kitchen attributed to their personality. The best possible option that we have is someone who has a charitable or a very giving or a generous personality, and that's why they're volunteering to work in the soup kitchen. And the best possible pair that represents that are, as some of you have said, are C and F. Uh, F is benevolent, which means generous, and altruistic is one of the high frequency word. It means someone who is extremely selfless. So both of these two words, if placed back into the sentence, keep the meaning consistent. She volunteered to work in the soup kitchen because of her altruistic nature. She volunteered to work in the soup kitchen because of her benevolent nature. So both of these words keep the meaning consistent and not change the context whatsoever. Candid is open and straightforward, does not make sense, nor do we find an alternate word with candid that would have kept the meaning of the sentence consistent. Yeah. So let's have a look at another example. So the corporation expects only blank increase in sales next year, despite a year-long effort to revive its retailing business. I'll give you guys 2 minutes to sort of go through this, apply the skills that we're talking about, making sure that you read and understand, you paraphrase, you identify the tone of the missing word, and try to come up with a word of your own choice. Once you have done that, you marry it with the two answer choices that you see in the filling the blank answer choices. So yeah, you have 2 minutes, and you can share your answer choices in the chat box. All right, ED, DNE, modest and slight, volatile and dynamic, slight, DNE, ENF, which is slight and volatile. All right, cool. Thank you so much for your responses, guys. Again, using the same rationale, the word that comes in our mind is meager, yeah, or very small, because the corporation is expecting a very small increase in sales next year, despite a year-long effort to revive its retailing business, right? So we're looking for a word which is similar to small or meager or something that represents a very small quantity here. So by that logic, we can potentially eliminate expanding or dynamic because they're relatively slightly positive words, and the word we're looking for is has a negative connotation, yeah, because the trigger. So the correct answer choices to this question are modest and slight. And applying the same logic, you will see that if they're replaced with one another, they keep the meaning of the question or the entire sentence consistent. You can eliminate volatile by the similar principle. So using this logic, and there are a few other examples as well, that basically test the similar skill set and capability. Um, Again, if we collectively go through this question, that although it does contain some pioneering ideas, one would hardly characterize the work as blank. Uh, there's a contradiction because the sentence starts with the word although, and it says that it does have some pioneering, some new ideas. However, the word cannot be characterized as blank. So again, we're looking for something opposite of what is being said in the first part because it's being negated. So you can definitely eliminate conventional or orthodox because the word that we're looking for is of the own or something along the lines of original, and the only answer choices that make sense in terms of keeping the meaning consistent are original and innovative. Now you can say that these two are not exactly synonymous, and that's perfectly fine because in these questions we're looking for a pair that produce the best case scenario to answer if there are any questions on the sentence equivalence bit of the GRE section. Any questions, guys, on sentence equivalence? Right. Moving to the third component of our uh, verbal section within the GRE exam is the reading comprehension. And as the name itself indicates, um, reading comprehension basically tests your ability to comprehend, analyze, and critically evaluate information that is given to you in the form of a passage. The interesting bit is this is that section that captures almost 50% of the questions within the verbal section. So if there are 27 questions in the verbal component of your exam, you can expect around 12 to 13 questions to be from reading comprehension passages. And reading comprehension passages usually range from passages with one paragraph going up to as high as 4 to 5 paragraphs, and followed by each of those passages are questions, and the number of questions can range from as minimum as one or two to as high as 4 or 5 per each passage, right? Obviously, the length of the passage usually will determine the number of questions that will be followed by the passage. Usually, the most important thing in case of reading comprehension is to sort of gradually build your capability of reading and comprehension of English language. And the natural question that arises is that how do we do it in a time of 2 months, 6 months, 4 months, keeping in view that we're talking about a language that gets developed over the course of certain years, starting from schooling all the way to like university education. So the first thing first, what I tell students is because in reading comprehension, you can expect the reading passages to be from all different kinds of the material or the subjects that are available. You can expect the passages to be from physics, natural sciences, business sciences, organizational sciences, philosophy, any kind of different subject can pop up. Yeah. So first, it is extremely important that you have built the ability to sort of read through passages without losing focus, even if you're reading a subject or a passage that is not of your interest. For example, if I do not appreciate or like, let's suppose, social sciences, and if I get a passage on, let's suppose, any subject from social sciences or philosophy, there is a possibility that I might lose focus or get distracted as I go through the passage. And what ends up happening is that I end up rereading that passage more than once, which basically not only costs me time, but also cost me my mental focus and energy that can eventually have a very detrimental or a negative impact on the output of my test. So that is ex- first thing first, that starting today till the time you sit for your GRE, that you're reading at least 1 to 1.5 hour every day, academic scholastic work or editorials on subjects which are varied and diverse, and particularly on those subjects which you know that you knowingly dislike. If you're someone who is very much not interested or completely disinterested interested into business, I would suggest that you start reading at least 2 hours of business related content starting today, so that you're able to keep your focus on the comprehension to a particular subject that does not interest you to your core. So that's the first step. Second is obviously reading and building. Your capability will eventually help you in reading comprehension. And not just that, you have to do effective reading. And what does effective reading mean is that whenever you're reading, you also in parallel, need to be able to summarize the information that is available here. Because in reading comprehension, you get I put them in certain classes. So, for example, the most importantly or occurring question is the summary of the passage. That's number one. What they basically are asking you to do is that if you could summarize the entire passage that you have read in 1 or 2 lines, and you get five answer choices, and your job is to select one. The approach to do such questions is that you should have an overall understanding and view of the total entire passage. And for you to be able to do that, it is imperative that you fully understand the function and the meaning of each and every single paragraph that is there in the passage, and how it is interlinked to the passage. Yeah. Um, so for the main idea, it's important that you pick information that is consistently present throughout the passage, and then you go with an answer choice that completely addresses the question at hand. Or you can potentially get questions related to vocab and context. These are the kind of questions that you get when they give you a certain word and they ask you to give a meaning of that context basis the information provided in the passage. Uh, so it's extremely important that in order to address these different kinds of questions that are there in the reading comprehension, we first fully understand the passages, irrespective of the source or discipline that they're coming from. We fully understand the ideas and the opinions that are being explained in the passage, and then answer the question that is being asked. Again, you might see something in the answer choices that you may have read in the passage, but it may necessarily be answering the question that is being asked. Yeah. So it is extremely important for you to not just fully understand and uh, comprehend what the passage is saying, but also make a note of what question is answering, and then address the question, keeping in view the answer choices accordingly. Yeah. All right. Um, Before I move forward, I would want to sort of again take a pause over here and see if there are any questions from you guys on reading comprehension passages, or the questions related to reading comprehension. Any thoughts or any questions so far? All right. Seems like there are no questions so far. Okay. Um, Quickly summarizing the three components that we have talked about, test completion, again, 5 to 7 questions that you'll get in your GRE verbal section, and sentence equivalence, again, 5 to 7 questions. Extremely important for you to understand the sentence, identify the tone, come up with the missing word of your own uh, choice, and then marry it with the answer choices that are given to you. Depending upon text completion, you pick one or two or three, depending on the number of blanks. And sentence equivalence, you have to select two, keeping in view the meaning and the logic remains consistent. In reading comprehension, you read, evaluate, and understand the text. Uh, then be able to effectively summarize and be able to infer or critically evaluate the information given in the text, and then address the particular questions or the ideas that are being asked in the question based on the answer choices that are given to you, and make sure that you're able to provide yourself with the evidence of the answer choices that you're going with, the evidence that is there in the reading section of whatever information or the answer choice that you're moving forward with. And around a good 50% of your questions arrive or come from your reading comprehension. Moving towards the last component of our verbal section, which is independent of your scoring in the verbal reasoning section, which is scored from 130 all the way to 170, is the essay bit. Essay usually is always going to be the first section that you will see. It's an analyze and issue assessment. In the previous structure, we used to have two essays. Now it's only one. A 30-minute task, you're given a statement or what is called issue, and what you have to do is you have to evaluate and build a cogent or a convincing case on a stance that you are taking. So I'll try to sort of take you guys through that with the help of an example, and we'll take it from there. Yeah. So before we do that, there are usually four avenues on which your scoring guide is made. You get a score ranging from 0 to 6. It is scored by a AI-based computer system and an evaluator, and an average of their scores, which is given to you. There are four components. They look at of your essay, how well structured the content is, along with the examples, how clear the thought is, how well it has been structured in terms of the structure of the sentences, and overall organization slash articulation, or whether or not clearly you are able to reflect your thought into the body of your essay. That's the first thing that they basically evaluate. So these are the 3 to 4 components on which your scores are made. Let's evaluate this with the help of an example. So this is a sample issue task. So which says the university should require every student to take a variety of courses outside the student's field of study. The information that is given at the bottom is usually a standard piece of information where it says to write a response in which you discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with the recommendation, explain your reasoning for the position you take. In developing your position, you have to describe certain circumstances in which adopting the recommendation would or would not be advantageous to your position, and explain this with examples to shape your positions. Um, what's the first thing that comes to your mind after reading this uh, issue assessment at hand? Would you like to go in favor? Do you agree with this stance, or do you disagree? What's your view on this? You can share your thoughts in the chat box. All right, some of you have said agreed. My response to this would be something that you'll have to sort of um, follow, I would suggest, whenever you're doing or whenever you're doing your prep for GRE writing section. First and first, you're given 30 minutes to do this assessment, yeah? Oh, and once you have gone through the issue, you take first 5 minutes to fully jot down the pointers in both directions of whether you agree or disagree with the statement, because a lot of times we read a issue and we take a stance and we start building our essay based on it, and halfway through the essay we realize that we had more content or examples on the other side of the issue, and that's where we sort of at times lose track or at times change stance right in the middle of the essay. It's imperative in the first 5 minutes, once you have seen the issue, you list down all the potential rationale examples that you have for both sides of the issue. And once you have done that, you evaluate and then take a stance based on the initial outline that you have made in the first 5 minutes. For example, if you're in favor that university should require every student to take a variety of courses outside the student's field of study, what are your potential reasons for going in favor of this issue? If you guys could share what could be the potential reasons why whoever is in favor of this, what do you think are the reasons why would you go in favor of this? And feel free to share your thoughts on this. So you might say, for example, they should be allowed to take a variety of courses outside the course main field of study to build a holistic profile, to give them exposure to subjects outside their main area, to help them build complementary skills, so on and so forth. And then at the same time, if you were to disagree with the statement, you can build your position by saying that we need subject matter experts who are experts in their field versus who are all rounders, or you need experts who are subject matter experts and not necessarily have a well-rounded expertise on multiple subjects, yeah. Or you can make a case that it should be left to the individual discretion of whether or not they want to study courses outside their main field of study. The point is, you can go in favor or you can go against the idea, or you can agree or you can disagree. What you will be evaluated on is how convincingly you build the stance effectively, irrespective of the side that you're taking. The GRE is not going to, the GRE test does not evaluate you basis the stance that you're taking. It evaluates basis the cogent or the logical argument you're building and the supporting content and examples you're using to build that stance. Yeah. Now, now the question comes in, the first 5 minutes we do this task, we make an outline, know that let's suppose we want to agree with the statement, how do we use the remaining 25 minutes? The next 25 minutes should be spent on creating the entire body of your essay, and the body starts off with the introduction, which summarizes the issue and should clearly state your position. Someone said, well, in the chat box, if you could play both sides of the field, absolutely, that's not a good idea. It is recommended to give your stance clearly and then create a position, clearly state your position, and then defend it by giving supporting evidence and the content around it. And you have to do it in the introductory paragraph of your essay. Post the introductory paragraph in the following paragraphs, each of the paragraph of your essay should explain in detail the reasoning of why you are in a particular position. So if you're agreeing to this position, the second paragraph of your essay after the introduction could be that you want the student to have the choice of being able to select different courses outside the course of study. It's a matter of freedom of choices for the students. And then you can end it with an example. This followed by another paragraph, which is that you also, moreover, you want the students to have a diverse exposure outside their main subject so they can have a well-rounded profile and more employability once they graduate. Again, you can end this particular paragraph with an example. And you want to build another perspective. You can give a third paragraph the conclusion of your essay, or you can include the other side, which might give the perspective of why it may be a good idea for at some particular point for people to have where the other side might have a better perspective. Like, while yes, we do want students to have a holistic perspective, but some might agree that having subject matter experts is much more needed. Appreciating the other side and reflecting that in your essay demonstrates that you fully appreciate and you have acknowledged the other side as well, but you sort of counter that by restating your position with the content example that you've created. And towards the end, in the conclusion part, you sort of conclude and summarize the positioning that you have given in the body of your essay and close it. And the last 5 minutes, for the first 5 minutes, making a list, making an outline, identifying the position that you take. Next 20 minutes, you write the body of your essay with the introduction, followed by each of the paragraph focusing on the content along with the examples, and in the end, you conclude it. The last 5 minutes are extremely important. One thing that students miss most of the time is that you have to evaluate or relook or proofread your essay. You have to first make sure that your essay is organized and consistent with the thought that you had in the beginning, and the entire essay is following that. So making sure our essay is well organized. You have to make sure that your sentence structure is correct and does not have any grammatical or logical fallacies that make the sentence structure weak. So we have to make sure, because unfortunately there is no proof or the spell check available, just like MS Words, which you're used to of. You have to make sure there's no grammatical or spelling mistake in the sentence or the essay. And then in the end, you have to make sure that your essay is well structured with transitional words at the beginning of sentences and paragraphs wherever required, like additional on a concluding note, furthermore, etc. Overall, making sure that your essay is coherent with the idea that you thought of in the beginning when you started drafting the um, essay to begin with. So that's the broader direction for whenever we are talking about the analyzing and issue assessment for the GRE. Again, I'm going to take a pause for a minute over here to see if there are any questions on this particular subject. So feel free to share your questions in the chat box. Okay, so analytical marks are counted in final marks of GRE. The answer is no. The 145 requirement is for the verbal and analytical quantitative section. The writing is completely independent of that. How many body paragraphs are good to add an essay depends on the content that you have. It's imperative to have an introduction, concluding paragraph, and in between these two, it's usually good to have 3 to 5 paragraphs, but you have to make sure that it's supported with the content that is substantial and is not drag, and it comes with examples. And then when it comes to examples, they ideally have to be fact-based examples or hypothetical examples. It's usually recommended to avoid using personal examples because it just does not give a good impression in terms of depth of the writer if they're using personal examples. Yeah. So yeah, anything else? The opinion matters. No, the opinion, it does not matter which side that you're taking, whether you're agreeing or disagreeing. What is evaluated is how structured, articulated, effective, and logically and grammatically correct your essay is. That's what basically is evaluated. So this is, if there are no questions, we move forward. I'll do a quick recap of what we talked about in the first section. I'm sorry, I think my line got disconnected. So yeah, how these three are built on your ability to sort of understand English language, be able to comprehend it, and then address and answer questions based on the information that is given to you in the form of test completion, sentence equivalence, and reading comprehension questions. And in the end, it ends with an essay. Although in exam, it comes in the first section, is the analytical analyzing an issue, where you take a stance and then you build your position on the stance within 30 minutes, making sure that you fully capture and address all the pointers that you want to convey in the essay. So that's about it. I hope you have sort of gotten a preamble or a basic idea of the verbal section of GRE is all about. For any details, further information, you are more than welcome to reach out to me or to reach out to Zan and USEFP for the information. And then over to you.
Thank you, Tanzeel. So we just have a few questions which I can ask you and you can answer. So one of the most common ones is, are there any resources you would recommend students use for preparation?
Then, as I was mentioned during the course of session as well, so the best case is ETS own resources on whatever information is available on ETS ORG website. There are a lot of sample questions, practice material available. Once that is done, then it's up to the individual student. Usually, my own preference has been towards Barron and Princeton. They're both of them are pretty good, and they can be accessed. What's important is that students practice mock tests, and some of them may be available online free of cost, and some of them maybe need to be bought online, because it's imperative for them to sort of get into that zone of not just being able to answer questions, but also being able to time themselves so that they're able to sort of finish the questions effectively in the limited time, because there's no point of getting the questions correct if I'm spending 40 minutes to address 15 questions. At the day of the exam, I'll have, let's suppose, 23 minutes to do 15 questions. So it's important for them to sort of get into that feeling of being in a situation where the time is restricted. So that's why my approach is first exhaust ETS resources. Once that is done, go with Barron and Princeton, then try to do all the possible available online mock tests that are there.
And we have a few questions about the essay part. So one of the first one is, does my opinion matter when it comes to, will their opinions matter when it comes to grading the essays?
Okay, so I think that one I took earlier as well, that no, opinions does not matter. You have to sort of support it with the stance that you're taking and build a cogent argument around it. Sometimes students get confused that their situation might get impacted if they agree or disagree to a certain situation. The response is no, because the test or the essay is going to get evaluated on the content that you are creating or that you are using, not on the stance that you're taking. So whether or not you're agreeing or disagreeing to a particular statement or issue, it's the content of the argument that you're producing will define your score in the essay.
Perfect. So someone's asking, are analytical marks counted in the final marks of GRE, as Fulbright asks for 145 in each section?
No, the score of your essay is completely independent of the score of your verbal section.
Okay, and another one is, are there any vocabulary specific resources they can use for like to prep for GRE vocabulary?
So there's a resource available of most frequently used word list. That's a list of 3,300 words that is available on Google in the form of PDF. That's the first, I would say, list that people should get acquainted with. That's a list that has been compiled for all the standardized tests, including GRE, SAT, and GMAT, and it's consistently used across the globe. It uses all of the words which the test makers have used in the standardized test over. So yeah, that list is my go-to list when it comes to standardized test.
Perfect. And then another one is, what is a good approach? Shall we first fully understand the passage, or shall we first go through questions and then understand passage in context of asked questions?
Uh, it's always good idea to sort of go through the passage before looking at the questions, because you do not want to sort of confuse your mind with information by going through the question and then looking at the passage. Because when we look at the passage, when we look at the question and then do the passage, your mind is automatically trained at looking for answer to the question in particular and then missing out on the broader idea of the passage. And that's very critical, because usually the passage is followed by more than one question, and when there are more than one question, it's just not humanly possible to sort of remember everything that is being asked in the question. So it's a good idea to understand the passage first and then do the question. And if any question requires you to reread a certain part of the passage, that's always it's a good idea to do it, but not a good idea to go through the questions before the passage.
Another person's asking, what is suggested? Shall we disagree clearly, or shall it be in between the lines? Like, how open should our stance be?
Yeah, I addressed it during the conversation as well. That's extremely important to be clear and state your stance clearly rather than taking the middle route, because test makers do want you to take a stance and then defend it with your cogent arguments rather than being in the middle and taking both stances equally and not being able to make a decisive view.
Another person, basically, I think what they're trying to ask is there any online resource or some place where they can go and see the format of a solved essay and have like and see paragraph explanations
Yeah,
of like
ETS
solved
website.
essay?
Yeah.
Perfect. Yes. And there's somebody asking, can we include a paragraph for counter argument too?
Yeah, you can. You can. If they have time, they can include it. That's a good idea.
Is that wordlet PDF for vocabulary? Can someone correct it if I've gotten it wrong?
I'm sorry, come again?
Someone saying, is the wordlet PDF for vocabulary?
Yeah, it's a PDF file. Yeah, it's available online.
And this question I'll just take quickly. What is a good verbal score to be shortlisted for Fulbright scholarship? So the minimum score you have to get in both sections is 145 each. However, Fulbright is very competitive, so the higher your GRE score, the better your chances are. But 145 is the minimum. I can't give you like what a good score would be, but it's an extremely competitive scholarship, so the higher your score is, the better your chances. Okay, somebody's asking, the question be phrased a bit weirdly, maybe you can understand it. Someone's saying, all the ETS books have practice, but no official guide. What can you say on for this or on this? I'm a little confused by the question myself.
Yeah, so I addressed that already, that it's first exhaust all the resources that are available on ETS website. And then they can go into either Barron or Princeton, but first exhaust all the ETS resources that are available online.
Okay, so yeah, that is about it for the questions we have so far. Everybody, we still have a little time in our session. If you have any questions, please feel free to like say it right now. If you have time, Tanzeel, if you could just copy paste the link of the thing you're saying for the vocabulary and put it in the chat box, that would be super helpful.
Sure, I will. Not
Thank
an
you.
issue. Sure. Let me just put in the chat box. Yep. Anything else? And do we have any questions then? Or we
Yes, let me just see. Okay. Just like, oh, hello?
yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, I think it just disconnected slightly. Okay, I've also repaced everybody. The link is in the chat. That is what Tanzeel has recommended. Yes, sorry. Any other questions? How, since a lot of people doing the GRE are appearing for it so they can be eligible for Fulbright, how soon do you think they should give the GRE in your opinion? Should they wait for the latest date or should they give it a bit earlier?
290. So that's
Sorry, everybody. Tanzeel's just having some connectivity issues. He'll be back in a minute. Hi, Tanzeel, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I think that somehow it's closing. The Zoom link is disappearing on me. Anyways, I was responding to your question that it depends on the individual own preparation and the standing point. If the current score is 300 and the target is 320, that's a gap of 20 points, which can be bridged by, let's suppose, 2 months preparation. But it all depends on the individual circumstances and how much time they're putting in every day. Someone putting in 4 hours every day versus someone putting 10 hours every day. It's journey that will vary on an individual level. Perhaps the teacher or the counselor and the individual can work together to sort of co-create a study plan and then work out the timeline accordingly. For some people, 1 month is more than enough, and some people, even 3 months are less. It totally depends on the number of hours you're able to invest and the kind of score that you want to get to, I would say. So there's no hard and fast right amount of duration for the matter.
Uh, and someone's asking, apart from the link you sent for the vocabulary, does ETS also have its own GRE word vocabulary? Are you there, Tanzeel?
Yeah, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, so I would say, yeah, EDS does not have its own list. It does have some resources available, but they're mostly sample questions, but not their own list.
And just to clear any confusion, how many times in a year can a person give GRE? And is it
It's a,
recommended to give it multiple times or not?
You can take it at least as many times as possible. In fact, there's no minimum count in terms of GRE. I would suggest to spend your money wisely, to be honest. Do it when you're fully prepared and ready to take it. And you can definitely take more than once to improve your score, but it's imperative to know which side, which area that you need to work on before you go towards improving your score. So if you want to improve your quant score, work on quant accordingly before sitting for the test second time or the third time. So yeah, but there's no minimum check in terms of number of appearances for the test.
Okay. Someone's asking, is EPS or EDS website for GRE? He is saying ETS. I'm just going to put the name in the chat box as well for everybody. It's ets.org. This is the website, ETS. It's in the chat box, all of you can see it. And somebody is asking how much does it cost for a GRE test?
Still have to check. I think it's $195, but it again bases the dollars and other things. It keeps on changing. I'll suggest everyone to go to ETS website and sort of for their respective centers go through the available dates, timelines, exact conversion fees rate available for that center, and any other material thing that they might need to sort of get familiar with for the test day.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to also put this link in the chat box. The test mostly like at average is now is like $220. So keep that in mind. And also everybody, I'm putting the link for the ETS website where you can see how much the test costs. Also, if you have any questions about signing up, you can reach out to our testing department. Our testing department also has the Prometric Testing Center where you can give the GRE. So I'm putting their email. Any questions you have about registering for GRE or seeing if seats are available, you can also reach out to them, okay? Somebody's saying my score last year for verbal was 143. Should I go for a retake? I'm a student of English literature. So Muniba, if you're planning on applying for GRE, then yes, you'll have to retake it because even the minimum score required for Fulbright is a 145 in both the sections. So yes, you would have to retake it, unfortunately. And Tanzeel, just one question. When they send their test scores, like if they've given it 1 time or 2 times or 3 times, will all their previous scores also go or
So
no?
ETS does send all the scores to the Fulbright Commission or the universities respectively. However, universities take into consideration the highest score.
Okay. Everybody, if you have any more questions, please just put them in the chat box if in the next 2 minutes. Otherwise, we can conclude the session. If you have any more valid questions, and just to remind everybody, the recording for this session and all our previous GRE sessions and future GRE sessions will be up on the USEFP Facebook channel or the USEFP YouTube channel. And these sessions are usually available 1 to 2 to 3 days after the session is done. So please keep an eye out for that, okay? All relevant links that were discussed are in the chat box. So if you want, you can quickly take a picture of them or copy paste the links.
All right, I think. Thank you so much for your time, Zen. Thank you, everyone. And in case of any questions, feel free to reach out. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Tanzeel, so much. And everybody, thank you for joining today's session. Thank you, Tanzeel, for such an informative session. You really covered everything. And if you still have any questions, feel free to reach out to your Education USA advisor. If you have any questions regarding Fulbright, you can also email our programs department, info@uscfp.org. And if you have any further questions about Fulbright you'd like answered, we're doing another Q&A tomorrow, 2 to 2:30. You can go to educationusa.pk to our upcoming events and sign up for the Q&A. And apart from that, please follow Education USA Pakistan and USEFP on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube and Twitter. There you can see all our recorded sessions and know about all our upcoming events. Thank you, everybody, for joining today's session. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and Allah Hafiz.